Welcome to Life in Sirens, Behind and on the Scene, a podcast by first responders. We're your hosts, Sophie,
Jamie,
and Aubrey.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of any medical institutions, emergency medical services, or healthcare organizations. Patient privacy is a top priority, and all discussions involving real-world emergency situations are de-identified and altered to ensure confidentiality. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your local EMS protocols before making any decisions regarding patient care or medical practices. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may include discussions of real-world emergency situations.
Welcome to another episode of Life in Sirens. It is summertime, so we'll be talking about drowning. We'll talk about EMS response, pathophysiology, and some myths about drowning.
Drowning.
Some myths about drowning.
The first myth is how is it spelled? Not with a D.
Not with a D. Don't say that. Don't be like me. Quick stat before we get into things, which we had no idea. I think this is according to the World Health Organization. Drowning is the third leading cause of unintentional injury death worldwide.
Which is wild.
That's pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
So, chances of you coming across it in your career,
Yeah.
favorable.
Yes.
And if you're listening to this and you don't know how to swim, learn.
Yeah, or just don't
Yeah.
get in water.
It sounds like a hazard. I think you should learn.
I agree.
We are also going to discuss the term dry drowning and why it is not real. We will not be
Boo.
using it anymore.
So let's talk about what the heck drowning even is. So let's define it. Drowning is the process of experiencing respiratory impairment due to submersion or immersion in liquid.
It's quite broad.
Liquid.
Just a liquid.
Any liquid.
It's pretty broad.
It's
Yeah.
very broad.
So how do you categorize drownings? Because when we think about it, or at least when I think about it, I think of if someone drowned, they died,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So you can kind of differentiate that by saying a fatal or non-fatal drowning,
Okay.
Yeah.
which
Pretty
is
basic.
where we get into dry drowning not being a thing,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And near drowning.
and near drowning.
It's still a drowning.
Still a drowning,
They just didn't die.
which
It's
is
just
where
a
we
non-fatal
will
drowning.
transition to non-fatal drowning. So your patho is when you think about the actual timeline of drowning, because it's like our other injury patterns that we see. It's not normally prolonged. It's normally quite quick that the patient is actually injured, but drowning is a prolonged process. And so you have the initial breath holding when someone realizes essentially that they're trapped underwater. Then the panic and gasping, which can lead to the water aspiration, and the aspiration of water is what the drowning is. So what that leads to is a loss of surfactant, which then leads to alveolar collapse, and then it can cause shunt physiology and profound hypoxia. The loss of surfactant and the alveolar collapse, that part is the part that people talk about dry drowning.
Which is just it's just the continuation of the progression of the disease process or injury process. It's just part of it. It's not a separate thing.
Yes. So if you have a drowning event, are not unconscious, and you recover from said event, very quickly you will start to develop symptoms of drowning, like your surfactant loss, your alveolar collapse, shunt physiology, and then hypoxia. It is not hours and hours and hours later.
Yeah.
It will be within a very close timeline of that event. Some other pathophysiology that people tend to, I think, talk about less now, but used to talk about a whole lot, is your freshwater versus saltwater. We used to really harp on it is important to know what kind of water they drowned in.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, not so much anymore, because we're really not concerned with electrolyte shifts and things like that. You just need to know how those things can potentially change some of the physiology. So fresh water is a hypotonic solution, which means it has less electrolytes in it. So it will pull electrolytes from your alveoli, and so that's going to cause like the hemolysis that we see. And it's less clinically significant than we really thought it was. And salt water is a hypertonic solution. And that's where we're concerned with like the excess of fluid. So we'll draw fluid into your alveoli to try to like reach a homeostasis. And it's also not a major field distinction. It's not something that is going to really affect our physiology in a huge way. And that's because our issues are loss of gas exchange, not our electrolyte shifts.
Thanks. Again, dry drowning or secondary drowning, that is just going to be, after all these things have happened, our lungs are continuing to get sicker. They're more sleepy, they're more tired, and that's when things develop into like conditions like ARDS. That's kind of where you see like this like dry drowning essentially. It's like there's an injury to the lungs and it like progresses to the point of like the severity that is ARDS.
And that can be similar, like the aspiration of emesis, right? If you have an aspiration of particulate matter, which in most water sources, there's going to be particulate matter, especially like in a lake or something like that, you'll get a chemical pneumonitis, which then leads to things like ARDS.
Yeah. So your assessment for these patients, it's going to be very similar as any other patient. Kind of think of, I think most of us do, but if you're not on the track of drowning is trauma, just try and get on the track of drowning that's a traumatic accident. So assess these patients the same, consider C-spine, all the things. Airway, breathing, circulation. Make sure we're mitigating hypoxia. If we need to suction. This is kind of basic stuff.
For sure. Especially with like considering drowning as trauma, is that I was a lifeguard for many years.
Jamie was a lifeguard.
Right. And we always learned though that like an unwitnessed drowning is always trauma until proven otherwise.
Yep.
And the only way it's proven otherwise is by x-ray.
Yeah.
And so anytime that you have a drowning, like C-spine is critical because especially in the summertime, a lot of drownings are actually dive injuries.
Yeah. Especially in young people.
Drowning, like diving from high places and things like that. So we always want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, young adult drownings. Probably jumped off something that they weren't supposed to.
For sure.
So we already know that the biggest obstacle that we're going to have to climb with these patients is oxygenation, right? That's our mechanism that is impeding our homeostasis right now. So escalate to whatever oxygen administration you need to escalate to. If you need to ventilate these patients, just be mindful that it's going to be pretty beneficial to ventilate with PEEP, with added PEEP. If you are to the point and you have a patient that is still able to tolerate CPAP, that's going to be a big move. So think of similar, obviously we're talking about fluid in the lungs and all these things. The biggest issue that we're going to have to overcome with these patients is keeping our alveoli open, right? So we are wanting to get as much oxygenation as we can. CPAP is a great way to do that. Obviously, if your patient is decompensated to the point of altered mental, loss of consciousness, all those things, where our hands are kind of tied with that, and you're going to have to move to a BVM. But again, PEEP is going to be very beneficial to these patients.
PEEP where it's at.
Yeah, PEEP's where it's at.
Peep it on them alveoli.
If you do get to a point where you have to take this person's airway, if they are vomiting, you have that loss of consciousness, just be very aware of it's going to be a wet airway. You're going to have a lot of fluid in there, whether it is coming from their GI tract or it is coming from the pool that they were just in. It's going to be a wet airway. So just try to be prepared and mitigate for that.
There's also a huge risk of laryngospasm.
Yeah, that is true.
Especially with like any kind of aspiration, because your body naturally wants to get whatever's in the lungs out.
Yeah.
Or nothing gets back in. So a lot of times you can see a laryngospasm. So if you have RSI capabilities. Yeah,
that's going to be a great time to utilize that. This is one of those patients where you are going to want to have suction on deck.
Literally on the deck, like on the pool deck.
Yeah,
literally,
like take it with you outside.
Yeah. An OG tube.
So our ventilation strategy for these patients is going to be basically the exact same as anybody else, right? You want just to maintain adequate tidal volume. Like we've already mentioned, your PEEP is going to play a big role with these patients. and put freaking end tidal on these patients. It's going to tell you a lot about their status. And also, as we've talked about in other episodes, you want all of the documentation that you can get, especially if it is a respiratory patient, and end tidal is the easiest and most hands-off way to document an airway. And it does it for you. It transmits from your monitor.
Sure.
Put these patients on end tidal. Put everybody on end tidal.
It keeps you accountable on your ventilations. In the event that you do have a vent, if you have a ventilator, like most patients, you want to keep your plateau pressure below 30 because wet lungs are less compliant lungs. And so we don't want to cause a lot of trauma. So we do want to try to keep our pressures low, but also recognize that you have less compliant lungs.
Yeah.
And it's an obstructive issue, but not necessarily in the way that we think about it normally.
Yeah.
So think about that in your ventilator management if you end up on a vent, and not just bagging with a BVM, but think about that you're going to see some obstructive pathology, but it's not necessarily something that we can fix the way that we would normally think about. And try to keep your plateau pressures as reasonable as you can, but it may not be super plausible while trying to prevent hypoxia. So just keep your mind right.
Yeah, and water liquid is the opposite of lubrication. Like, I think in our brains we're like, oh, well, everything can slip and slide around. No. Everything's just going to stick. It's going to stay real closed off. So you probably will get alarms, but
Yeah, for sure.
monitor your patient. What about hypothermia?
Ooh,
Cold water drownings?
They're not dead till they're warm and dead.
Yeah. And
But even then, they might not be dead.
check core temperature. Manage your patient just like you would any other hypothermic patient. We're not necessarily trying to keep patients hypothermic, or if it is summertime, you can still become hypothermic even if it's 1,000,000 degrees outside. So if they have wet clothes on,
Get 'em off.
Yeah, take them off.
Yep.
Dry them off.
Yep. Especially if you see like ETOH patients and things like that. It's summertime. People get in pools. They get really drunk. They get out of pool in wet clothing, whatever it is, and they go sit in air conditioning.
Yeah.
Right. So like even if it's a what we would think of as a non-fatal drowning, but then this person gets out and everyone's like, "You good, bro?"
Yeah.
Then they go inside and they sit in the AC. You may end up with a hypothermic, non-fatal drowning victim at that point.
Or even a kid that you throw in the ambulance. Again, remember, this is a trauma.
Warm.
It's annoying, I know.
Right.
But make your ambulance warm.
We talk about the difference between like active rewarming and passive rewarming. But I like the phrase like rapid rewarming more than active. And so like things like blankets, keeping your truck warm, that is not rapid rewarming. That is like a slow and steady wins the race rewarming. So make sure you do those things.
What if they die? So obviously our priorities are still oxygenation, ventilation. Again, you're just going to do this the same way you're going to do any other code. Just know that a lot of the times, or like a little knowledge nugget here, is that a lot of the times these hypoxic patients, like cardiac arrest and like initiated by hypoxia, probably asystole or PEA. So just if you see a rhythm, just do your due diligence. They still could be dead.
Absolutely. And like the asystole PEA situation, that's not indicative of them being more dead than if they were in VTAC or VFib. It's just because it's a hypoxic arrest.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
To consider.
I like that point.
Some special considerations for the pediatric population,
Which is
honestly most drownings that we have are peds.
Every drowning I've ever had has been a pediatric patient.
I've only ever had one adult.
Yes, normally as peds, and this can happen not just in pools, not just in the summertime, but it often happens in bathtubs, or even, this sounds terrible, but like buckets.
Those
that
5-gallon
are
buckets.
Yeah.
Because remember, toddlers are top heavy. Their little heads are so heavy. So if they tip forward,
they get stuck upside down
into a bucket, they will get trapped in there.
Which is terrifying to think about.
Flip your buckets upside down, basically, is the name of the game.
Yes.
Flip them upside down.
Again, with like every pediatric patient, just because the kid looks fine right now does not always mean they are fine. Kids compensate really, really well until they don't.
Yeah.
So make sure you're doing a very thorough investigation and assessment on these patients. And Just transport them.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
can get
Just
the delayed
transport.
pulmonary edema,
Mhm.
which is, I think, where we get
The
the
phrase.
idea.
Of dry drowning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just delayed.
It's just delayed. And I think that the general like physiology of children and like the concept of kids is really interesting because like the younger they are, a submersion they will behave differently in a submersion because they behave only on innate
Mhm.
instinct.
Yeah,
But when you get into that, like basically like their frontal lobe is not necessarily like fully functioning, obviously, but like it comes online and you start making decisions. That point, like there's not enough there for them to not take a big deep breath in the water if they feel like they have to breathe.
yeah,
So your aspiration risk there is huge. And then I feel like adults, you get a little bit less because you start making choices on how to get yourself out of that situation. But socially, I just find that interesting is that like babies will flip themselves over and hold their breath.
yeah.
Mhm.
It is wild.
It's super innate.
Mhm.
But then kids will stand straight up at the bottom of a pool.
Yeah,
And it's just wild to like see the transition. Once you start making choices, it actually like gets worse.
Yeah.
This is not like a standard of care that I'm aware of, but I'm just thinking about it and I want to talk about it real quick. For example, we understand the potential clinical decompensation of this patient, especially in pediatric patients. And I'm just in my brain, this like linked up with RSI,
Mm.
and we know they have the potential to desaturate during a rapid sequence intubation. We know a patient has like a significant potential for like a true drowning to become hypoxemic. Do we provide essentially an initial nitrogen washout and supplemental O2 to prepare for that?
Absolutely.
If they're that sick, go ahead and throw them on oxygen, even if they're
Absolutely.
satting fine now.
Yeah. Because I think at that point, you almost have like a, I mean, you have shunt physiology. So you've got your blood flow is not an issue. You just literally have less oxygenating alveoli. So yeah, I think the more efficient you can make what exists is great.
Yeah. Pre-oxygenate for potential decompensation.
Yeah, for potential. I think that's a great idea.
Alright.
Because you don't want to be behind the 8 ball. You don't want
No.
to get to where they're desaturating and you can't.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fix that, and then you just decide you have to take their air away.
Yeah, which is definitely a big scary potential of drownings.
With transportation of these patients, I think the big thing that you can give in your handoff is a full picture of the event, right? So was this event witnessed? Do we know exactly how long this person was in the water? What was your initial encounter with them? Were they A&O walking around? Were they already unresponsive? And then obviously if you are on a cardiac arrest, initial rhythms, when did you get ROSC, all of those things. But
Yeah. Also, like with your submersion time, drownings that last less than 6 minutes have a significantly better prognosis than drownings that last more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's scary.
So I'm guessing.
what about 7 to 9?
Yeah, I think if you're between.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Either way,
Unknown.
50-50.
Yeah.
I think if you're between that, it's really just a toss up for you. Probably better than 10, but worse than 6. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you're that greater than 10 minutes, that prognosis is really low. You're going to have a significant amount of hypoxia and damage. So just that time frame is very important.
Yes.
And if it's unwitnessed, it's unwitnessed and nobody knows. But you can at least get a roundabout time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Or at least try to.
age and like comorbidities and things like that
Mhm.
are a factor to like how much time you spent in the water. I talked to a crew recently that had a drowning of an 82-year-old.
Oh.
Mm.
He was literally in the water like less than a minute. He was under the water for like less than a minute, and
Oh,
he was
geez.
just unresponsive and hypoxic as fuck when they got there.
Holy.
Like, so if you already have sick lungs,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And your ability to compensate is
For
huge
sure.
with these types of
Yes.
injuries.
Yeah, but like working at the pool, I have seen a 6-year-old inhale straight into their lungs like a gallon of chlorinated water and just been totally fine
yeah.
for like hours after that.
It's just that
Just
it just takes a while for
Yeah.
that edema to set in and
which
whatnot.
is just wild. Like if you're young,
Yeah.
you'd be chilling.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, like your younger patients, they are going to compensate longer. They are going to seem fine.
Yeah.
Like we've all been at the neighborhood pool where someone's like, I had to pull them out,
Yeah.
and you know whatever. Those kids are still at risk. You still want to transport them so they can be like monitored. Like most of our pediatric facilities have like an observation wing or whatever. You still want them to go for obs because You just don't know
Yeah.
how they can deteriorate.
Yeah,
Well,
you don't know the extent of the damage that's
Yeah.
happened in there.
For sure.
And that's what I was going to say too. Reasonably, if it is reasonable, even if your child is compensating and doing okay, I think it would make sense to take them to a regional trauma center.
Mhm.
They just have all the resources.
Yep.
If this, shit hits the fan.
Yeah. You don't want to be going to like a local Band-Aid.
And then it get really bad. They have to
Yeah.
RSI them there because
Mm.
we've all seen how that goes.
Right. And a lot of times, like, if you don't have any experience, like, not even experience, but like, if you just don't have the frequency
Yeah.
to have to do it, and it doesn't go well for adults, much less peds. My
Yes.
goodness. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say EMS intubates more pediatric patients than any adult ER
Oh, for sure.
doctor.
For sure, for sure. And so when we talk about, like, obviously it's most often kids, and we made a joke, but I'm kind of serious, like, flip your 5-gallon buckets over if you have
Yeah.
children around, especially little toddlers. But also, like, if you have a pool, put a fence around it,
Yeah.
because
A lot of these can be prevented.
and some of the worst drownings that we've ever worked and our county has ever worked has been pools without fences.
And
Mhm.
children who are supervised,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah, like their parents are on
Right
the
there.
deck,
Mhm.
and someone looks, and it only takes 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it can happen so fast. And so pool fence advocacy, water safety education, like, that's super important.
Right. And
Like, we need
Lifeguard Jane.
to, right, but like, we need to, like, learn how to swim.
yeah, well, and if you're a parent and your child, whether they're in a flotation device or not, is in water that's taller than you are able to stand in and you
Mhm.
can't swim, what are you going to... That's bad.
That is bad news
That's
bears.
a bad idea.
Also, flotation devices. And so anytime you're in a large body of water, like, use a life jacket. But with kids, there's a lot of flotation devices that are out there that are actually not approved flotation devices. And so those floaties, that they're everywhere, and it goes across the chest and their arms. Those teach kids to swim in the drowning position.
Yeah, that is crazy, isn't
Mhm.
it?
So it's chest up, feet down, and they learn to swim that way. So then one day when they decide, I don't want this thing on anymore because the other kids don't have it on, and they jump in a pool, the first thing they're going to do is put their chest up and their feet down, and that's how you drown. That is not a swimming position, it's a drowning position. And so those are terrible. And if you have them and your children wear them, please get rid of them. A regular life jacket allows them, they can stand upright, but that teetering position, it will put them either on their face or back upright.
Yes.
And so life jackets allow them to get into a swimming position.
And choose Coast Guard approved.
Yes. So if you want a Coast Guard approved device, the life jackets that have the through the leg strap to keep it from floating up too high on their head, that's going to keep your kid from being silly when they take their life jacket off and think they can swim.
Yeah.
So, some key takeaways from this episode. Always consider spinal precautions in traumatic water entries. These aren't always witnessed. We don't always know the cause. So, always keep that in the back of your mind. This is an oxygenation problem. So, don't delay any sort of ventilatory or oxygen support that these patients might need. Even short submersions can have delayed effects, so always do thorough assessment, transport these patients. Dry drowning is not a diagnosis. Don't say it. Don't even think
You will
it.
embarrass yourself.
You're straight to EMS jail.
Stop that.
Straight to jail.
You're being bad.
And then as always, pediatric patients can deteriorate even after looking fine. So keep an eye on those little bad boys.
Yeah, just take them to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right. And remember that drowning is not just water in your lungs. It is the effect of said water entering the lungs. So it is an airway and an oxygenation problem. It is not just like, we got to get that water out.
Yeah.
You know, it's different than if you have like pulmonary edema,
Yes.
For sure.
because it's not innate to your body.
Yeah, and it's sudden.
Yes, it is a
Sudden
foreign
change.
invader. So get out.
Lock it down.
All right, guys. Well, it is pool season, so don't expect that you won't see something like this in the near future. I hope that you don't, but it is always a risk. Working in the field, again, with pediatric calls, they can be especially traumatic, so I definitely believe that this is one of those calls, pediatric drownings, that should be debriefed. I feel like they're always the most chaotic scene too. Everybody's
yeah.
screaming, everyone's panicking, there's a bunch of people in the pool, whatever. It's usually chaotic and scary and sad and just terrible. check on yourselves, check on your partners, debrief these situations to keep them hopefully from building up. As always, stay safe. We will see you next time.
Right. And it's America Month. We all know. So celebrate, but we don't want to see you be red, white, and cyanotic.
Ooh.
This has been Life in Sirens, produced by 3 nerds trying to bring you content that you might actually care about.